Thank you, Teresa. And again, I want to welcome everyone for coming to the first CLA Dean's Town Hall that will start hosting on a monthly basis. And it's a way to provide an opportunity, first of all, for us to come together as a community in this virtual format, but also to give you an opportunity to ask questions, express concerns that you might otherwise have done personally had we been on campus this semester and encountered each other in the different wonderful spaces in the building. So again, I thank you for taking time. This is a very busy part of the semester. And everything you've done this semester has helped our students to stay on track and to be successful. And by this, I'm talking about what you normally do, but also you've really increased your creativity, flexibility, enthusiasm, collegiality, and much more. And this is on top of not only teaching, maintaining your research, working on your service commitments, but also sometimes just getting through challenging days. And there are challenging enough times right now for all of us. For some of us, that means having to take care of people at home. For others, it might also be just how do we maintain, our sort of normal life in these very unusual times? How do we stay safe, healthy? I think everyone at some point or all the time is concerned about health and safety. And how do we do that while we still live normal lives and try to create some sense of normalcy? And despite all of those challenges, that's what you've done. You've kept alive a sense of normalcy, and you've done that as we've created this virtual university experience that none of us expected to create. I should say that I've been very pleased attending many different events on campus this semester. And they, of course, demonstrate not only your hard work and how it's paying off keeping your students on track, but also it has helped to maintain a sense of community and engagement. So I just want to single out three types of gatherings I've attended. One of them is the invited speakers that you have to your different programs. And most of the speakers I've listened to have had between 80 and 90 students there, which I just think is phenomenal in any time, but it's phenomenal now. And it really, really helps keep the students feel connected to something beyond just, how are we going to live in these COVID times? I think the distraction is good too. But these speakers have been really thought-provoking, and I've been really impressed by the questions your students have posed to the speakers. I've attended some thesis defenses, and I have enjoyed all of them. They really highlight the high-level work that your students have been doing thanks to your help, but also, and to me, this is really equally important, it's not just getting the research done, posing the right questions, and looking for the evidence, but it's how we present. And I really appreciate the work you've done with your students on their presentation skills. And that's going to help them in whatever career they pursue. And that's really important. And then finally, I've attended sabbatical presentations that have really helped me to get to know all of you better and your research interests and even about your programs. So within less than 5 months and working only remotely, well, I should say mostly on camera. I'm in the office, as you can tell, I'm in the office right now. I'm here almost every day. I have a greater sense of CLA's personality, its strengths and passions all of you have for the future. This is really important. And during these times, it's even more important. And so within this short period of time, you've really made me feel welcome and part of the CLA community. And I want to commend everyone for that. So maintaining community and the communities that you had pre-COVID is really complicated to do. It takes a lot more effort. And so in our various meetings with departments, CLA Council, the committee meetings, and with some of you individually, Karen Esco, Bob Brook, and I have heard a lot of concerns, going back to the beginning of the semester about the alienating impact of working the way we do, about stress, about classroom challenges, and just how do we work in this environment? And so to provide some additional outreach because we're limited in resources. We created the Dean's Office Tips, DOTS, that come out every Monday and provide some information in 3 different categories. And I think many of you have looked at them because we can see that the links have been, touched or opened many times. So one area is in the classroom, has to do about teaching, pedagogy, and these are mostly directed at, how to do it during these COVID times. The second one is in the field, that has to do with research. And then the third one is at home, and that has to do with what do you do on your off time. That's the one that is perhaps the most challenging, but in any case, they all get a new link every Monday. And then Bob and Karen have been hosting drop-in sessions that mimic what you might be able to do had we been on campus. That is, stopping by or running into us in the hallway or the cafe. So we're really, working on trying to maintain community being accessible. These monthly town halls will also contribute to that. And so while we'd all prefer, I'm sure, to have a building full of people and have, almost endless opportunities for those serendipitous encounters that we all, took for granted before COVID, we're managing to use Zoom and WebEx to maintain some of those. They're not as serendipitous, but we're managing to use those to maintain a sense of community and relationships. And I think that's really fantastic. As usual, the end of the semester is always a time of greater stress. COVID just adds to the stress. And we in the Dean's Office, and I'm sure you as faculty members, as staff members, and as chairs, have also seen an increasing number of complaints, a lot of anxiety about final exams. Some of it is, typical, but some of it is aggravated by COVID. And we seem to be getting more complaints. I don't know the university enough, but they seem to be more extreme, some of them. So what I just want to remind you to please remember that we're all in this, and managing in different ways. We're all under stress, but please keep in mind how vulnerable our students can be, because their perceptions of this may not be always front center in our minds. They often look at us as all-powering or all-knowing. That comes out in a lot of these student complaints and concerns we get. We don't really think of ourselves that way. I'm sure not regularly, but we are in their minds, and we are in reality. We know much more than them, or we wouldn't be at the front of the class. And so just take extra caution to be patient and understanding. And this is not about lowering your academic standards in the classroom. It's just about, being more flexible than you might otherwise have been in other times, pre-COVID times. And always feel free to reach out to your colleagues. I hear about a lot of that going on, which is fantastic. Your chair at the dean's office for advice, help, bounce some ideas off of us. If you're stuck with a situation you've never encountered, no matter how long you've been teaching, or even support, for difficulties you're having with students, faculty, and sometimes personal situations, at least reach out to us before things escalate, because we are here with open ears, and often we have some ways to direct you. And then the last thing I want to say before we go to the questions is that we all know that the strategic plan draft was posted to the website before Thanksgiving, so we're being asked to provide comments individually by December 9th. So please, please do that. It's really important. Despite all of the eyes that went on that strategic plan, as you know, sometimes very obvious things are missed, not intentionally. It's just everyone thinks, oh, it's there because we just assume it is. So it's important to draw that out now. A final version will go up on the website in January, and then the colleges will be asked to align their strategic plans with the university strategic plan. Okay, end of my formal comments. And let me just start with 2 questions that came in before the town hall. They're both about the budget, but they're slightly different, so I'm going to address them separately. So the first one I'm just going to read to you, if you allow me. It was Dean Chulos has in the past said that faculty have so far largely been insulated from pandemic-related budget cuts. But this but that this will not be true next year. I would like to know what the faculty should expect from budget cuts in the coming year. So how I read this is that perhaps next year the faculty won't be so insulated. So I know really very little more than what you've already heard from the provost or the president. We are definitely in far better shape as an educational institution than many, many of our peers around the country. If you have colleagues at other universities and you've talked to them, very likely you've heard some pretty distressing stories. I have dean colleagues in different parts of the country, and some of them are closing entire departments. I mean, we're not looking at anything like that, but that doesn't mean we haven't had to tighten our belt. The biggest impact I would say most people have felt, if at all, is that we can't hire replacements very, very quickly. So we have a lot of unfilled positions, and that helps us. It keeps us actually from having to think of things like layoffs, furloughs, and so forth. That's really important. I don't know when hiring will begin again, and some very small hiring is happening. But aside from that, what we know from the state so far is that some of the cuts that we've made to our budget this year will go over as base for next year. So we'll begin with a slightly smaller pot of money. And I don't know what that's going to look like in the college. One concern I have, and this will lead us to the second question, is at the beginning of the academic year, because we're not traveling and because we're not doing a lot of things on campus that were budgeted for, we were asked right away to go to travel funds and those other things that we won't need because we're working mostly remotely. So we did that. I don't know how much of that will move over to the next academic year or fiscal year, but I've talked with Kevin Burke, who works on the budget in the provost's office, and he's given me some ideas how we can replenish some of those funds from other areas. So I don't know that we have anything dire coming up. Nobody is talking that way. I do think we have to see how our enrollments in the spring turn out. I also think we need to see how the state budget goes. So there are some unknowns, but we are in really, a really strong situation moving forward. I did say that I'm not sure about travel, but I should give you one glimmer of hope, and that is the president did approve some tenure track hiring for positions to start next academic year. That's a very good sign because many universities have stopped temporarily, and sometimes that goes on for years, but they've stopped the hiring process. So it's a very bleak job market for newly minted PhDs. But in the college, we have 4 full-time tenure track searches that will begin soon for the next academic year. But I said that, there was a segue to the second question. The second question is, will there be any funds available for faculty for conference registration and research in the spring? Yes. And also, I fully expect there to be that money next year. We're still seeing all virtual conferences, okay? So what that means is despite the cuts we made in the travel, and most of the travel money went for conferences, we are not seeing anywhere near, that number in dollars of requests for conference registration. So conference registrations are far cheaper. And then of course there isn't travel and hotel to pay. So that makes it much more reasonable. And so yes, we will continue with conference registration, and we'll have another round, call for people who are requesting research funding from the college. We'll do that in the spring as usual. So those are the questions that I received in advance. So now I will see, I'm not actually watching the Q&A, so I'm going to let whoever's watching the Q&A tell me if there are any questions that have come in live.
So good morning, everyone. This is Karen Esco, and I am indeed watching the Q&A. And we do have some questions. So the first one here is a shift from the budget. And the question is, are there any special procedures for final exams this semester?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm hoping everyone received an email yesterday from the registrar's office. I looked to see where it was sent, and sometimes it's hard to know from the to line. But there was a message yesterday, and if you haven't gotten it, ask your chair, because your chair, I'm sure, got it. And it was explaining that essentially, we're going to have the final exam period as usual. It listed the times and talked about different formats. If it's a virtual format versus, say, that is virtual synchronous or virtual asynchronous, there needs to be a final exam or project or summative, meeting, just as you normally would have. There has to be something, and I'm sure everyone has worked that in, to bring together the material in the semester just the way you normally would have done.
So the next question I have in front of me is, what if the university is a victim of an attack similar to the one that just happened against the Baltimore school system?
Well, that was really terrible. I am going to ask for Bob to answer, because he has expertise, more knowledge and expertise in this area than I do. So Bob.
Good morning, everybody. Bob Rook here. One of the things that I do know at this moment is that OTS is preparing a more formal statement response in terms of commenting on what happened with Baltimore County schools and their remote learning environment. And I anticipate that statement being out in the next 24 or so hours. I'm getting the information probably the same way many of you are, via the Baltimore Sun and other media sources. Is it looks like they're going to be back up and running on Wednesday. That doesn't necessarily minimize the concern expressed in the question. And I will say that we don't know, for example, exactly what the source of the attack was. We know it was some kind of ransomware. And it's being treated as a criminal act, so therefore it's still under investigation, and information regarding the specific attack is pretty closely held. I will offer, in terms of something that I know generally about various aspects of cybersecurity, is that it's really everyone's collective responsibility to be vigilant, particularly since we share the web space via various systems on campus, whether it's our email, on-campus accounts, or Blackboard, et cetera, et cetera. And so therefore, just some general sort of safety tips in terms of exercising care when you open an email, or should you choose to open an email, that you have a pretty good idea who it's from. Because in some cases, simply the initial act of opening an email can generate some vulnerabilities. But most particularly, if there is any kind of attachment on an email that you're really not sure of in terms of who it's from, don't open it, because those are invariably, or can be, sources of malware and sort of the first step toward a system-wide attack. And finally, one of the things that's become particularly prominent over the past, I'd say, 12 to 18 months, is that no doubt many of you have seen these tiny URLs, usually beginning with BTY. In other words, there are programs out there that shorten these excessively lengthy web URLs, that is to say, the addresses. And so there's a system out there that shortens them to a much, much smaller address. The problem with that is that in that shortening process, it can in fact disguise elements of malware. So my general rule of thumb is to proceed exceptionally cautiously, if not, don't proceed at all when you've got one of those tiny URLs popping up in an email. But beyond that, the question is a what if question. And we don't yet know enough to really begin to frame our response. I am fairly confident in terms of the overall cybersecurity systems that we have on campus. But again, as I said initially, that we all have a collective responsibility in terms of our cybersecurity on this campus.
Thanks, Bob. I also want to remind everyone that in your email, there's a report fish button. And, I've used that pretty liberally, and you'll get a response, right? You'll be told if it's okay or not. And sometimes I get it back and I get something back, tell me it's okay. And and then I just was extra cautious. I also think because it's, a stressful time and tiring time of the semester and year, sometimes we push ourselves more than we should. And, again, maybe you should just step back if you're getting too tired, either take a break, or maybe it's time to, wait till the next day. You wouldn't want to be caught driving, sleeping. And I see it as somewhat analogous, maybe not apparent at first at how dangerous it can be, but if you accidentally open something up because you were too tired, and it creates a huge vulnerability for the entire university population, that does cause a lot of damage.
Okay, the next question up is, what is the policy for grade challenges? Although it's late in the semester, can grade challenges be made during the semester for a specific assignment, or must challenges wait until the end of the semester? Does this include academic integrity violations? Do you want me to take that one, Chris?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Karen, because I know that you work with this, and I might get them, but I don't really respond to them. I hand them over to Karen.
So if I miss anything, fill me in. First thing I want to say is that we have just finished revising the steps, and they will be posted on our website, hopefully within the next couple of days. The chairs have just finished reviewing our guidelines and the steps which follow policies and also follow the catalogs. So students can choose to appeal a graded assignment or the entire course grade. And that does not have to wait till the end of the semester. Same thing with academic integrity violations. When they come up, I urge you to address them immediately, because that is in the best interest of all involved. If you have any questions or have any concerns, please let me know. In addition, in lieu of the formal letter that faculty used to submit to student conduct, it is now done through a portal, and you'll see all that information when we post the step-by-step guidelines probably by midweek.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to skip a little. I see a question that came in that might be timely. What is the expectation for submission of ARs, 5-year reviews, binders for promotion? Last spring, the provost allowed 5-year review submissions to be postponed by a year, and then those faculty would have a shortened period to follow. So 6-year review and then 4-year review. What is being discussed in this area?
Well, thanks. That's a good question. I have not heard anything. So I don't know what's being discussed. I certainly will follow up and ask about that. So I'm sorry, I don't have anything more to say. I think really what we have to do is see how the spring semester continues. And I'm not willing to speak for anyone else here at the university, but if you think in parallel ways, maybe there will be some adjustments, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything, and I'll look into it.
Okay, the next question up is, what will the building access hours over the holidays be?
Oh, okay. So for the holidays, and I actually had heard about a month ago, like, what would the building access hours be now that the students are not supposed to be here anymore, the few that were here, and they're the same right now, just so you know. And then when it comes to the holiday time, we are closed down, right, for the holidays. And so those times, the buildings are locked as they are now, and only full-time faculty and staff would have access to the building. Students would not be authorized unless they were required to be here for something. I don't know what that would be. For mini-mester, again, full-time faculty and staff would be able to come in using their card. I'm not sure that the building will be unlocked. So I think it'll be locked the way it is now. And then any students working in the building could come here as well. And then for spring, boy, spring seems close, but so far off, especially when we're talking about the virus, vaccines, and all of that. But it will continue that pattern, so that if the leadership at the university says we should keep the buildings locked, only provide access for people who should be in the building, including many more students that are now in the building, we'll follow that. If they say we have to have it open, we'll have to follow that as well. So sort of wait and see. I would, always expect an email announcement for any updates on this. If you have students who need an exception to get in the building, they can write to the college email cla@towson.edu and request that exception, and we'll work with them. I hope that answers the question. So it's, there is a plan, but as with everything in the COVID period, we just have to be very flexible. And we have to see what of course, the state requirements are, like if there are any executive orders, we always have to follow those.
So not only did you answer that question, but it seems that you answered the next question. So let me read it just in case there's something you want to add.
Okay.
What about mini nester and spring semester? Who will have access to the building? Will it only be students and faculty and staff who have to work in the building? So there's a little twist to that, because sometimes people have questions if they're cutting through or if they want to come on campus and don't have to physically be present.
And I should say that, safety in different ways is really important. As you know, it's a very large building. So this semester, there have been so few people in the building. One aspect of safety, of course, is COVID-related safety. But another one is who should and shouldn't be in the building and how do we monitor that? And we have limited ways to do that. So I was very hesitant to have the building opened up all the time. And we didn't have to. We weren't absolutely required. You know that the library is open all the time, and maybe some of the other academic buildings, but not all of them. So I mean, we need to keep that normal sense of safety in the building present always. So it's not just about COVID.
So, I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, to put them in the Q&A, and I'm going to move on to the next one. When will study abroad start up again?
I can take that one. Chris, do you want to take it, or?
No, go ahead, Bob. That's a good question. Thanks.
Based on what we're reading coming out of the study abroad office posted on the website, all study abroad for spring 2021 has been canceled. I will, following this meeting, reach out to Liz Shearer to ascertain any updates regarding summer and any programs into the fall and subsequent semesters of the next academic year. But I will say this, speaking only for myself on this, is that obviously, as we all know, it's going to depend on the progress of the vaccine regimen. It's also going to depend on the airlines in terms of them ramping up schedules that have already been severely curtailed. There are also any number of likely enduring legal quarantine aspects, namely, for many of these study abroad trips, you're going to be changing planes. And so there's the issue of transit rights in terms of passengers, et cetera. So I would say that, again, according to the study abroad office, all events are canceled through the spring. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, I will check with Liz Shearer later this week in terms of likelihood or prospects for subsequent programs going forward after this coming spring 2021 semester.
So thank you, Bob. A lot, again, is out of our control, right? Because of COVID. And I did speak with Liz just before the Thanksgiving break, and she pointed out, which I hadn't thought about, is other countries have to be willing to receive us as well. So that's a big part of this. I do think as the year moves along and the vaccine becomes available, I'm really hopeful that life will become more normal. I know she's hopeful about the summer, and we have some summer planning that is, moving forward, not only planning, but activities. They're doing a lot of planning in the study abroad office. And so, they're using this time wisely. If your students are interested, they should really contact or look at the webpage. And then they should also, if you're interested in putting together a program, and you haven't been in touch with Liz because you're wondering, is it even worth it? It's a really good time. They're busy, but it's a different kind of busy than they normally are. So it's a really wonderful time to work with Liz on planning. She would really appreciate that. And then we're hoping fall is back to normal. So, a lot of hopes, but not many guarantees, except what Bob said about spring being no.
So another question that's popped up is, what is the status of course registration for spring 2021?
Oh, Karen, do you want to take that?
I can definitely take that. We just received the information from Academic Advising Center about re-enrollment. So we will be distributing that information, and that includes all the students who were enrolled this semester, have not graduated, but have failed to enroll in the spring. And what will happen then is we hope to reach out both our acting academic advisor in the departments and advisors within the departments to encourage and explore why those students have not enrolled, so that we can hopefully facilitate that re-enrollment in the spring. So you'll be hearing from us by the end of the week, or at least someone in the dean's office. In addition, I think we're operating, we haven't had a comparison yet to last year at this time. That's not posted at this moment, but we're operating over 50%. I think we're close to 60, 65% in some situations in terms of what our current enrollment is at this time, not specifically, but in comparison.
So we are, from what I heard last from the provost's office is we are, behind right now. And for spring enrollments, we really want to try to keep our students here, not just, you might think, oh, because of the budget. Of course, that's important, but really the research shows that students who stop often don't come back, or not for many years. So what it does is it really strongly negatively impacts their trajectory in life. And so we want to try to keep them engaged, as either full-time status. I haven't heard anyone talk about keeping them part-time, but I prefer them to continue the status they're at, whatever they're at. But, or if they're part-time, if they can move to full-time. But I still have to believe the benefit in keeping them in classes far outweighs, what might happen if they no longer attend university, even though it's virtual for the most part. Although we have over 1,100 students who are registered in classes in the building, that'll have some component in the building for spring semesters. So, that's a lot of students compared to where we are right now. And that means they will have that on-campus experience if all goes well. And, that can excite people who are on the fence for, many, many reasons. I know that there are many factors like loss of job, sickness in the family, and so forth. But not all students are in that situation. So the more we can, and even if they are, though, it's important, because the impact on what comes next is tremendous.
In addition, we have transfer advising coming up in January. And also some students were offered the opportunity to defer from a September enrollment to the spring. And last time I heard, and this may have changed, we had close to 100 students who deferred in the fall and indicated an interest in the spring. So those are a couple of other things that also will increase our enrollment. We have another question that's popped up, and that is, we have a temporary CLA academic advisor. That's great. What support, tasks, et cetera, is the advisor doing? So I'll take that if that's okay.
Yeah.
So she will be the person who will be reaching out about re-enrollment. She's been assisting departments with degree progress reports, because part of what's operating now in this virtual time frame, the more contact we have with students and the more even one-on-one types of experiences, outreach from an advisor, we believe is really critical. So the degree progress plans that allows students to again connect with an advisor completing those. The re-enrollment, she was very helpful in our open house setup. She will be going from department to department to begin to capture the answer to the why Towson University question, and why your particular department and your major is a good place for students to be. So, and we're open for anything that we might be missing that you would want to send our way. That would be terrific. We're fortunate that Lauren Botcher came from admissions, so she has a really good background about the university and about all the different support and resources available for students. So do not hesitate to reach out to her, to reach out to me, if we can be of any additional assistance in your particular unit. Okay, now we're going to shift a little bit. What do you like about Towson University so far? So I'm guessing that's for you, Chris.
Yeah, I would think that's for me. Boy, that's a good question. What do I like about Towson University so far? Some of you have already heard me talking about this. So, you know, of course, we face a lot of challenges being virtually. I would really love for us to be back normally for many reasons, but also because I'd like to see people. There's an energy and enthusiasm here that comes through even virtually that I really appreciate and I really like. There's a dedication, a sincerity, a civility that I deeply appreciate. I've been at, you know, different universities in different cities and countries, and this is the first time I've seen so many good things come together. And that energy, I don't have much contact with students, okay? So I'm speaking mostly about, you know, everyone who's here at this town hall, so faculty, staff, administration. You really believe in what you say you are setting out to do. That to me is part of the sincerity, right? And there are many, many ways to get to those different goals and objectives, not just one, right? And people are exploring them. They're trying different things, and some are really working well. Others, you know, maybe like anyone doing research, sometimes it doesn't work out. And so you learn from it and move on or do something different or tweak it. Or I love that. I just love the energy of the community, which, you know, I can sense through this camera. I am not fond of the camera, but I love, you know, what comes over and through your emails and so forth. I really like the way you work with your students. I like the way you, I mean, I'm not in any of your classrooms, but I can see it. I can sense that you really encourage them to think expansively. That's what a College of Liberal Arts should be doing. You probably know that there was, oh, now I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's a big poster idea or big idea poster competition. It's like the Shark Tank about a month ago, and it happened after hours, and I watched it from home. And I was tired that day beyond what I expected. And it just was such a big uplift. And you know that the winning idea came from a student in psychology, so one of our students, and then a minor in languages. So another one of our students, but she's a major in a different college. So I mean, that tells me that you're doing some good things, a lot of good things with our students. They're not just seeing liberal arts in one way or, you know, standard way. They're thinking much bigger, and that's exactly what we want to happen, right? I want to also say something else about the physical space, and you may or may not, you know, appreciate as much as I do since I'm seeing it new, right? And I haven't been in many buildings because they're closed, but the physical campus is great. It's lovely. I really am impressed with it. It's a nice combination of buildings and greenery. It's very, you know, intentionally designed. At least that's my interpretation. You may not agree with that because you know the history better than I do. I think that's really important. The buildings can be big and yet they feel intimate inside. They're intimate spaces. That's hard to achieve, and I really like that a lot. I am sure I'm missing many other things, but I like working with everyone in the college and across the colleges. People, the other deans, administrators have all been open-armed. They've been very helpful. And that's important at any time, but especially, you know, right now with us working the way we do.
Great, so we're coming up on the last question. So this is a last call for questions. If any of you, any of the participants want to add another question, and this one is also directed to you, Chris. What do you like about living in Baltimore?
Oh my, what do I like about living in Baltimore? First of all, I want to say that I do live in Baltimore and I like it. Both of those. I, of course, am used to living in large cities. This is not the largest, but it's not the smallest that I've lived in, because they offer, so much variety and diversity of experience and many other things. But like being at the university, it's very odd time because I have hardly met any neighbors. People are keeping their distance. So it's been unusual. I do like the way parts of the city have been designed and then redesigned and redeveloped. I heard an interesting thesis defense last week, I think it was, about this kind of urban redevelopment. And it's not always been done well, but it has been maybe improving over time, hopefully improving some in the future. By that, I mean that, the environment is considered more strongly, the population of people who originally lived there, to be careful that they're not just pushed out, and the ones that do remain, hopefully many are somehow feeling that they're really a part of this newly redeveloped area, which includes everything from having appropriate shopping, not just the fancy Whole Foods, but everything else that, people will need, having job opportunities, making sure that, the schools can provide good education. I can't say that I've experienced much more here because we can't do much, but I really love it. I love the nature. Coming from Chicago, people in Chicago always hear about what great architecture, and it is fantastic. They'd hear about the lakefront, which is one of our natural wonders, I think, as well. But beyond that, I would say there are limitations. Baltimore area doesn't have those limitations. It's really wonderful to see trees, mountains, hills. I think they're hills more than mountains. And I don't have to drive far. None of us have to drive far to have a completely different experience. I think that location is really important. I would like to see more happening with the infrastructure in the city. And I think all of you who have experienced Baltimore in different ways would agree, everything from the streets to, other things. But people are really friendly here. And there's a friendliness. I've told this to Bob and Karen, that, Midwesterners are always thought to be open, and they are, but they're not necessarily the nicest people on the street. Here, I can't say I've had a bad encounter. People are really quite hospitable, and I do appreciate that. There are probably many more things, but I think that gives you an idea.
That's terrific. That's the end of our Q&A. That's the last question that was posted.
Well, thank you for bringing those questions, everybody. Keep in mind next month we'll need, or the next time we do this, I don't know if we're doing it in January because of the holidays, but the next time we do it, we'll really want questions as well. That'd be great. So thank you everyone for joining us. I think we'll give you back a little bit time now, rather than try to push it till 11 o'clock. We can all use some more time that we can give you in this way. And, good luck with the rest of the semester and all of, I know it's a very stressful time. And then I really sincerely hope that everyone has a chance to, rest, relax, restore over the holidays, not only the 2 weeks that we're closed, but, for those of you, even if you're teaching mini-mester, but if you aren't, I know you're preparing for the spring, but hopefully at a different pace. And always take time to enjoy. The provost says this, and I do too. I think it's really important to get outside, for mental health reasons, but also just, it's a natural free resource for us to enjoy. And I strongly encourage you to, take advantage of it when you can. So thanks again for joining us. And Teresa, I think since we recorded, we might make this available. Is it possible to make it available?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll figure that out and we'll let you know. We'll put out a message and you'll find it somewhere, wherever that is. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.